my name's Audrey Kyle and I'm a watercolour artist, and I live on the cliffs, the Goblins Cliffs in Islandmagee, which is a peninsula located in County Antrim, Northern Ireland. I'm going to take you into the studio now and let you have a look around and tell you about my story. So I'm located in an used to be an old coach house, and it's now been turned into the studio. It has been a barn and a workshop and it's had various other jobs. We're located here on a farm. It's a 60-acre farm, so by basic standards that's a small place, and I farm it myself. I live here with my two children. I had a corporate job, and then approximately 10 years ago I picked up a paintbrush for the first time in 20 years and fell in love with it again. A lot of inspiration for my work comes from the landscape. Because I'm a farmer in my other job, I love nature, I love wildlife, and I love the outdoors. My life is dictated by the seasons, and as a result that is then transferred into my work. Where I live is also steeped in history and folklore, Irish folklore and history, and as a result that is also intertwined into my work and my watercolour paintings. If you'd like to come in. So I've lit the fire for you this morning because it's quite nippy. It's the end of March and things are just starting to heat up here on the cliffs. So I became an Économusée in June 2019. It was a big step for me, but it coincided very much with myself hitting 50 and making the decision to change this old barn into a studio and take my artwork more seriously. So as a result, I began painting, and people began asking for pieces and for commissions. I then diversified into cards and prints, and then shortly after that I took an interest in doing some workshops and experience days. Where I live is quite a unique place, and people began to really enjoy doing the workshops and being outside. We were bound to the studio for quite a while, and then I decided to take people for walks around the farmland, incorporating nature. We would have picked wild grasses and wild flowers and then came back to the studio and made studies of them. Soon after that I decided to do a storytelling course. Where I grew up in Islandmagee was reputed to be the theatre of the witches. The last witch trial in Islandmagee in Northern Ireland happened in 1711, and that happened in the house where I grew up in. So as a child I was fascinated by this and have always had a large interest in local history and folklore. A number of old farmers that lived close to me would have told me old stories, and that really ignited my curiosity. So I then began to intertwine the storytelling and the local folklore and old stories that had been passed down, especially by my grandmother in generations past, into my work. Things like, for example, the Irish hare, how the Irish hare can shapeshift from a witch into a hare. So whenever I take you for a little tour around here, you'll see some various mythical, if you like, creatures. I also have a large interest in lighthouses because I'm surrounded by them, and because I'm on the cliffs there are the Maidens lighthouses, and then of course Scotland's only 14 miles away, Port Patrick straight across the water, and as a result if I sit in my bedroom at night with the lights out I can see approximately 6 lighthouses flashing, so that's another big interest. So I'm very passionate about the storytelling. There's a number of stories that happened even on the farm here. Whenever I got the deeds of the farm when I moved in 15 years ago, set these huge old deeds out on the table, and one of the fields was called Todd's Rodden. Now Todd's Rodden in Scottish means the Fox's Lane. And I then remembered as a child there was a book called The History of Islandmagee which I read, and one of the stories was called the Todd's Rodden. So that little story, that little anecdote of the fox actually occurred here on the farm. So that could well have been the whole impetus to actually learn how to become a storyteller, and how then to have a passion to tell stories to visitors. Visitors love to hear a story and to hear a yarn. I think Islandmagee and Northern Ireland and the North Coast has a real unique selling point there with regards to how amazing our landscape is and how embroiled the people are in the landscape. So I'm going to take you for a little walk around the studio here now so you can just get a little feel for it. You'll see from the pictures on the walls already, as I've said, you have angels, seahorses, wise old owls, the Irish hare, pardon me, lighthouses, and then of course, because of lockdown, lots of country walks. That's certainly one thing that has featured. This is another good example here of, I suppose that's where my life has just transpired into a page. Everything I love is in this painting. We have lighthouses, it's a coastal view, we have a promenade, wildflowers, happy children and a dog. That's about sums me up. This is another lighthouse, this is Donaghadee Lighthouse, which is another lovely area in Northern Ireland. I'm quite a messy person, as you can see. I've tried to be neater, but it hasn't worked. This large board here on the wall again summarises the myths, legends and folklore in the area. This is a local harbour called Portmuck, which is approximately 3 miles away from me. And there's an interesting story there which people hear about a mermaid, where a local landowner hoodwinked a considerable number of people to believe that he'd seen a mermaid. It was published in a local, the local Belfast paper at the time, and hordes and droves of people travelled from Belfast and local areas to Islandmagee to actually learn about this, try and get a shot of this mermaid. Of course it didn't happen. This is an example of where I live. This is the cliffs, and you can see the Isle of Jura, Mull of Kintyre, Arran, the Eels of Craig and Portpatrick are all very close by. Above the cliffs where we are here, as you can see, the Todd's Rodent is labelled. There are 7 caves directly below me. We have Trump Cave, interestingly enough. This would have been part of the original Gobbins Cliff Path walk, a Victorian walk, which is still in operation today, and a number of people come to visit that every year. So you can see directly below me here there is a Kraken Cave, which is yet another reference to myth and folklore. We're not quite sure if there was a kraken lived there, or if it was because of the crack of the waves that was made in the cave, because the cave is quite a low one. Obviously the studios, I bring the outside in. We have our fir cones, I have lots of seed heads which I paint regularly. At the minute it's just the end of March, so we have the Pussy Willow, which is a beautiful specimen as well. So I hope you've enjoyed having a little look around my studio. If you do like my artwork, or if you want to look at it further, you're welcome to have a look at audreykyleart.com as my website, or on Instagram and Facebook at Audrey Kyle Art. I would send me a message, I would love to hear from you and hear where you're from. Enjoy your conference.